Most companies have a GTM strategy, but very few have a GTM that actually gets the money. If your go-to-market feels like a series of broken spreadsheets and missed targets, it's time for a system update. Welcome to GTM Get the Money Live. I'm Chris Ryan and I'm Lee Parillo, your hosts, and we're here to install the operating system for your revenue. We're moving past the theory and getting into the high-stakes execution of what it takes to scale in 2020 fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome out to another episode of GTM Get the Money Live. I am excited to welcome you to this show. We have a great guest, Paul DiVincenzo, or Cenzo if you're in the Northeast. Great guest. If you haven't tuned into the show before, this show is all about solving revenue problems. That's all we focus on, revenue architecture, but we do it for the power of good. We're a mission-based podcast, and we want to make sure that we can help companies solve revenue for growth and also for good. We want to make sure that people and companies give back to those around them, their communities, their families, everyone. So without further ado, Paul, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Would you like to give me a little backstory? Because I was going through, obviously we spoke beforehand, and I was going through your massive resume that you've had over the years. Just give us a short bio on where you came and where you are now.
Yeah. So currently I lead an enterprise team at Indeed.com, focused on technology staffing and consulting. So about $100 million revenue business within Indeed. And prior to this, I had a long career in a couple different categories. I was at Gartner, the technology consulting company, for a few years. I did a couple startups, exited one, which was really fun. And then separate from the day job, I advise companies on how to grow their revenue. And it's a small select group that I do that. And then prior to that, I spent most of my career in sales directly. So revenue and individual contributor and leadership throughout. And starting with it earlier, I think this is a very uncommon thing I've found. Most people fall into sales and revenue and marketing. But I have my degree from Purdue in sales and marketing. So I think I found what I wanted to do early and was good at it, and have continued to grow and learn as I go.
That's amazing. And it's not many higher education institutions have sales programs. We talked about this on another show. So it's great to hear, obviously, like you took the global one at Purdue, but it's good to see that starting to come, because we had a Sandler guy on, and he's like, nobody gets trained in sales. He's like, you have to learn on the fly. And the worst thing to do is to learn in front of customers, right? Or prospects rather. So it's good. So, all right. I like the acumen, and I like the pedigree, we'll say. So obviously you've worked for major companies, like very large enterprise. You've also worked with small SMBs to mid-market to enterprise. So you have experience across the gamut, just setting the tone for the show.
Yeah, most of my career has been spent in business to business versus business to consumer. So, even though that's the case, I think that's, business itself is a people to people business, but business to business is what I spent the time in. And most of it has, like you said, most of it has been in large companies when you think of me being an employee for those large companies. So AT&T and ADP in the early days, Cintas for a huge portion of my career, which is an industrial business most people haven't heard of. And then I transitioned into technology and did a couple startups really just in the last 8 years or so, where I've started to work for smaller organizations. So I've got a chance and the opportunity and I call it a blessing to be able to see all those different pieces. I've sold to small, medium, and large, meaning enterprise, but I've only worked in a certain category, but it's been a great run.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think that's such a skill set that I think is needed, especially today, is that holistic view, the holistic methodology. When you look at any company, it doesn't matter if it's large enterprise or small SMBs, they're all trying to solve the same problems, just in a different way based on resources. So during the show, we obviously, if you're tuning in again, we usually have one big question. We talk about it before and just what is the best thing that we can help the audience, some problems that we could solve. And one thing that we landed on was, the big question I think we discussed was, why do companies with good strategy, good product, good people, why do they still struggle to turn that into predictable revenue?
Yeah. And I hope that's a compelling question for the audience. And because I think there's a company, like you said, of all sizes, just different resources, but there's always constraints. But if they feel like they've got those elements you just laid out already in line, and the question still becomes, why can't we grow, or why can't we accomplish what we would like to accomplish? I would say it's what I'm calling the revenue translation gap is the best way to describe it. Um, and what that is, in my opinion, is really when some sort of friction in the company is causing this breakdown. If you look at it in silos, strategy looks good, maybe product looks good, maybe delivery seems okay. What is marketing doing? What is sales doing? And it becomes what I would consider a translation gap, because each one of those people and each one of those groups, big or small, isn't executing in a way that is clear value to the customer or the client. And then that becomes a breakdown in the ability to actually get deals and revenue and book that revenue.
And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think I've ever heard of someone call it a translation gap, but the translation gap could be from multiple directions. You mentioned kind of laterally, right? Like the different functions, doing their own things, trying to figure out how to solve revenue. But have you experienced it coming top down, where the visionary is trying to communicate to his team or her team how to generate revenue, and then like most visionaries, we're all, a little unclear when we think everybody understands what we're saying. Like, have you seen that?
Yeah, I think it's I think the tagline of translation gap is just to highlight that most things in business and life that I've found can be solved with great communication. And the challenge with all of us, as we still are before AI takes it all over, at humans, is we think we're communicating really well, and then that's not the case on the other side. That could be, to your point, it could be from top-down leader, CEO. Here's my vision for the company, and then everybody goes, okay, but how are we going to do that? So that could be a translation gap. It could be simply in the revenue organization of, here's what we want to accomplish, and a number is put out there, and nobody understands the why. They don't really understand the data that supports that number. And there's all kinds of different translation problems out there. And yes, to your point, at least as I've entered into leadership over the last decade or so, that's the biggest thing I detect myself on is, am I communicating clearly? And if the other person in group and the folks that need to execute something, including myself, do they have clarity on their end? And I think it becomes where we assume that we've laid it out clearly as leaders more than anything. And that starts the translation problem. And then it cascades down in various forms, both, vertically, meaning top down, and horizontally when we think of, did products solve the right problem, right? Or services? Are they actually solving the right problem? Or is the client telling the tip of the spear, CS, customer success and sales folks, are they telling them something different? So we're not even solving the right problem for the client base. And everybody wonders why we can't go accomplish that number. So again, when I think of translation gap, it's mostly communication.
Okay, mostly. Gotcha. I like how you said solving the right problem, because I think most companies, the companies that we work with too, they usually come to us for symptoms of the problem, not the actual root issue. And I met you through, GTM partners. We're both GTM guys, so we look at things similarly, but not every company does. So when you say there's communication issues and they have to solve the right problem, where do you start to help them identify the right problem?
Where I do it is I I start first with uh, bringing them a bit of a philosophy, is what I would call it. So I found that business is an intellectual sport, is what I would call it. And people, when they're busy in the business, they forget that. And sometimes they're running so fast that whatever that KPI is, that siloed item, or even a goal like, hey, we must hit this number to sustain the company, get to the next level, whatever it is that they're doing, even if they have great intentions, um, they forget that business is an intellectual sport. And so to answer your question, what I do is I try to do what you do on this podcast, is come up with some compelling questions. An example for one of my clients the other day, we ran a workshop And it's not a big company. They've got pretty good revenue. They're resource constrained like anybody. And somebody took a vacation and all of a sudden the crack showed, right? Here's breaking there. And so the compelling question for some planning that we're doing right now was, hey, what if we laid out these people, what if all of these people took vacation at the same time? What would it take for the company to continue to grow, clients to not feel any impact, and the targets still be on track if everybody took a 2-week vacation? That's the compelling question. And so that's where I start is number one, highlighting, reminding people or educating them depending on their business maturity. Hey, business is an intellectual sport and that is a key component. So what is your mindset going in? The second is, what are some compelling questions to help us solve this problem? And also get to the root problem. Because so an example, that's one example is if it's an operational, somebody may say, well, our client's not happy, so it's customer success problem. Okay. Maybe. Let's start asking really great questions to challenge ourselves intellectually, which I think a lot of people have fallen off from, not only because of AI, but people don't read anymore. There's a lot of different elements. But are you challenging yourself both individually and as a team to ask the right questions to get to the root problem? So I think that's what I do. Philosophy plus great questioning. That helps highlight what the root problem could be. And then let's pressure test that. Once we feel like we've got good clarity and everybody agrees that that's important in the problem solving scenario, now we can dig into it and start testing and making sure that is really the right problem. So we're not kind of like a doctor. Are you diagnosing the right thing or are you just making assumptions?
I love that. And I like the trust but verify, like, ask questions to get around our own biases that are natural. There's a lot of things happening here. I just want to back up because to create a scalable, predictable revenue business, to use your example of people going on vacation, it might be a system and processes problem. Like we need to be able to account for that if somebody gets hit by a bus, is the old proverb, not mine. But when it comes to communication from the Intelligent Gap, like walk me through a day. Like, do you put these teams in the same room from a go-to-market perspective and we're all having conversations and then we're asking questions to help them self-identify the issues? Like you probably see what the issues are, I'm guessing, and you ask questions to help them get there. Is that fair or is that wrong?
The way that I do it, and I think that the reason for advisory role generally is to get somebody with a different perspective. In this case, it's me to the particular client. I have a different set of experiences in business and in life to look and think about their problems or their challenges. But I think to answer your question, just in a checklist type of format, what I think is most important is to interview the folks that are involved. So let's say there's 5 people, head of CS, head of whatever the different, functions and practices are, is to go and interview them, say, hey, we're going to have a GTM readiness call, or we're going to have whatever the company wants to call it. We're going to have this call in X amount of time. Wanted to get your thoughts and opinion about, what are the challenges, what are the problems, what are the roadblocks? And in the world we live in today, it's very helpful. We can record those calls. We can make sure that nothing gets missed or uncaptured. And then we can use the tools that we have, both that human experience, AI to help aggregate, bring those together, and then ultimately lay it out for the team. So I think first is individual. I find that people won't open up as much in a group setting because everybody has an ego and that something. Whereas if the advisor or the person that's helping, if it's an external person, which I think is good to get a separate lens, interview each stakeholder, if you will, consolidate those into a document, a deck, whatever the format may take, and then present that back to the group and say, here's what we've heard, here's what I've heard. And then I want to ask some compelling questions around, let's say the top 3 items. And whether it's the example I gave, it's a compelling question about taking vacation, right? That highlight, oh, well, we thought it was a CS problem, but it's actually an operational system deficiency. Like you said, we don't have SOPs in these 4 categories. And so look, maybe the fix isn't as hard as we all thought. It's just document those SOPs. So when that person's out, that problem is not a problem. Somebody knows how to operate that. And so now this thing that felt like it's a CS or a customer success problem is really just it's a standard operating strategic problem that needs to get documented. And once it is, it starts to deplete. And so that problem is not as big. So I think it's interview as an individual, bring it back together as a group, focus, make sure that everybody agrees these are the items, and then create the action plan. I mean, pretty straightforward stuff, I think, ultimately.
It's straightforward, but I don't think a lot of people approach it that way. You know, a lot of people run assessments, and I think assessments will key you into some of this already. But I like the interview process. For our company, we do something very similar, but we're doing it through like AI augmentation. We're just doing it to understand operational efficiency, but we interview people to see where the breakdowns are. You're doing it from a leadership perspective and saying, hey, guys, we're not sailing the ship in the same direction. I'm curious about the delivery. When you deliver this to the group, you're obviously not calling anybody out or calling any team out. You're just saying, hey, guys, here's the top 3 things I heard. When we work with leadership teams, that's usually an aha moment for top leadership. They're like, wait a minute, like people don't understand how I'm thinking, is usually what we hear. But is there, like, if people are not great at communicating, and you're delivering this in person, and this is actual interview data that you're sharing, how do they react? Like, are they just like, okay, do they come together and say it's a joint problem? Like they agree with that, or there's next steps where you just questions, I guess?
Yeah, I think obviously these are all different personalities, different levels of ego. I think all of that plays into it. So I think that I would say that, to your point, number one, I agree with you, which is it highlights the leadership, some aha moments of, did they communicate clearly? Did they assume too much? And that's part of the gap. So maybe they could, depending on who it is, if it's if purely the CEO, if it's a larger company that has an SLT and then a mid-level, and whichever version it is, I do agree, number one, that it typically, if done properly, it highlights, did they have an initial communication gap, which is the seed of the translation problem? And if they're a great reader, which not all are, they will then own that and say, you know what, team, I caused this. And I also think now that I've been able to see it, I can help a little bit. And then also going forward, it's their learning curve to ensure that they don't do it again. So I definitely think that that's a highlight. I would tell you the second question you had, which is, how do they receive it? I would say that's very much an individual group, as well as the person, delivering that. So if the moderator, whoever is delivering that, doesn't do it with the nuances for that particular organization, the personalities that were interviewed, they have to take all of that into account to ensure that when they deliver it, the ultimate landing is the second version of what you said. Is we want them to come together to have aha moments and have egos come down, have guards come down, have it be the old meet the parents, like they're in the trust tree here. And so if that happens, then that's gone well. If you start to see people going, well, that's not really what I meant, and the ego's going up and the guard is going up, it could be, I think it could just be a personal problem, but I think a lot of it could be delivery, and the person that was facilitating, if you will, didn't take into account the new. So it's a very delicate operation, no doubt.
And that's a really hard skill to learn when you have a group of individuals that may, like, take Broderick, right? They just may have a different communication style or mindset when they look at a problem they're solving. Again, most functions try to solve the problem that's, quote, in there and under their role. But I like the master facilitation of like being able to identify the communication issues and then deliver that. I think that's really hard for me to do when I'm talking to someone. Like if I'm speaking to somebody who's engineer minded and they want, they're difficult, not by nature. They just want to see all of the, all of the items before they make a decision, as opposed to a leader that's just going to make quick decisions on bullet points and gut. I think that's really hard to do in person. Like, do you have any tricks or tips on how you identify communication styles? Is that something you do?
I try to. I mean, look, I wouldn't say I'm a master at it, but I think that, to your point, I've had enough broad business experience, which I think is where, if a company does bring an advisor to solve a problem like revenue, I think like a good example is asking the question is, are we solving the problem that isn't, right? Because if somebody, typically when we, coming back to the beginning of the podcast, if, hey, we want to solve the revenue problem, and somebody says, well, we just need more,
Right.
are digging into all these different elements we just described, it becomes, is that really the problem? Or is it you can't deliver the product that solves the problem? Or to your point, the engineering team, there's three key things that must get delivered to solve your ICP's problem or your ideal customer profile. So when I'm delivering it, I try to personally take into account the different communication styles so that it lands, but it also is not perfect. So it's really just doing your best. What I found too, the one thing that has helped me a lot is to preface things. Hey, Jerry in engineering, I want to give you, I'm laying all of this detail out because I think that's what you need to make your decision. But let me know if I'm missing anything. Hey, Sarah in marketing, right? Like I'm giving you this visual format, not just the bullet points, because I think this helps resonate with you. So, and again, now that we live in the age of AI, that's one of the biggest things that has helped me is I can take my core thoughts, which typically take the form of a bullet point and a listing, and then push it into the various tools that we have and say, hey, look, I want these types of pieces. I want a spreadsheet and data for engineering. I want a PowerPoint to make sure that everybody has a visual. And then I want a document that lays out everything in a readability format. And I actually push out typically one, at minimum two, a visual and a document. And if I have a data set that's really important, then I'll push out the data set. So I'll say, hey, everybody, ahead of the call, based on what we've heard, here's a pre-read of different elements. I've laid it out in 3 different formats and I just lay it out. And it has gone extremely well to do that. And again, it's just prefacing saying, I think the people that need to see it in these different formats, pick and choose the one that matters most for you. When we come together, the goal is to make some decisions, solve the problem, align on that this is the right thing, and we're asking the right questions. And then it moves from there to the next phase of, okay, great. We beat it up enough. We think we got the right 3 questions, the right 3 problems, because there's probably 100 and we can only focus on a few. Let's work on those and then keep coming back together. And that's it. I don't want to say it's basic, but I think it's very straightforward. And the delivery, the nuance of everything we just talked about is very, very important.
That's a master class in delivery, because I think you're saying you're not a master, but you clearly are. I think that is something that anyone could take away. I love that you kind of give them their choose their own adventure. Here's a bunch of data, guys, interpret it the way you want so we can have a real conversation. But then they start receiving it and understanding it in their frame of communication, or their frame, I guess, of mind. I love that. I think that's a phenomenal takeaway. I was going to ask you for one takeaway, but I think if anything, leverage AI to give different communication styles. That is wonderful. Can I steal that, Paul? Is that patented, or am I allowed to? All right. So
I found myself, I think we all are. And I'm in tech, I'm in AI all day, but I've also still found myself fall into the trap. And this is the trap of going, what I just described to you it would take hours and hours, days and days, weeks and weeks. And I'm not kidding. You can now produce that, let's say 80-20, 80% of the way there, you pick the one, Quad Code, Perplexity Computer, you name the really great model, and you can insert that and have it prompt, come back, go have dinner with your family or whatever, come back and go, okay, I've got 80% of it here. Let me start to now put the human element and make the final tweaks, customize. So now it's taken, an hour or 2 to be able to do that and have it ready to go. So I think everybody should steal it. And there's a lot of things both in business and life where we're holding ourselves up and we have a lot of resources and we're not being resourceful.
I think it's effective, and I think it's efficient, because historically we would go in there and we would have several meetings to identify this and several meetings to talk about it in different ways. So we figured out which way does Susie need it versus Paul, right? I think that's great to kind of preemptively do that and then get into the meeting. So that must increase the speed of delivering and the speed of them getting it, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, what I keep in the back of my mind. I fell off last year, but I'm coming back, which is I've been an avid reader. I typically read a book a month. I used to read a couple books, but one of the great books from a while back is Stephen Covey's The Speed of Trust. And so with everything we're just describing, I try to bring that, and I'll even say that to the team to say, hey, listen, if you haven't read the book Speed of Trust, that's what we're trying to get to in all of this conversating, collecting, delivering of information as a group and as a team, is if you can get to the speed of trust, that's the speed of them understanding, them acknowledging, their guards coming down. And then to your point earlier in the conversation of them actually receiving the information and coming together and going, I see what it is, right? Like, and each person, there's only one type of motivation, which is self-motivation. And they have to motivate themselves to go, you know what, product leader, I had my guard up. I kept thinking my baby was really pretty, but it's really not pretty. I see that now, and I need to fix this thing. So, hey, whoever it is in the group, I'm going to come back to you with this. But their guard has to come down. Same thing with sales is, hey, listen, we've watched 25 calls and sales. You never ask great questions about what the client really wants or what they hold as value. So we have this great product. We've interviewed clients and customers, and we know that they hold as value. But sales, when you're out there, you are doing a poor job of being a consultant and a client-centric partner. You are just pitching and pitching and pitching. So again, like each person, each practice, if you will, has to then receive that, take ownership. And the only way to do that is if there's a high level of trust. So again, how can we, if you're an advisor, how do you bring the trust factor to the group if there isn't one? Usually that's the breakdown. Again, translation, communication, but it all comes down to that trust too. There's a breakdown somewhere in the system, and it's not just you need more pipeline. Very rarely is that the answer. It's not just we need another pretty, carousel and we need to, repimp the website, which everybody always thinks is the next thing. It's like, it's very rarely any other thing. And so the typically what we're trying to get to is make sure there's a high level of trust, make sure we're not solving the problem that isn't, and, get to the root issue. And it's that foundation. Are we communicating? Are we actually getting the message through? So.
I love that. And honestly, I know you said it's direct, but again, I just don't think it's that apparent for most people to understand that. I love the trust element because you couldn't have that conversation with the salesperson that you said if you didn't have trust. If you came in there and be like, hey, how come you're doing this XYZ? You're not following the process, that would not go well after that. But if you have the trust and they see the pre-work, for lack of a better word, that then all of a sudden like, there's a reason why we're doing this. I can be more accountable. I can be more vulnerable. I can be more open to solving that. And it's really interesting. You said solving the problem that isn't. Another thing I may borrow, just saying, knock on wood. But yeah, this is good stuff. I mean, this is great. We kind of came full circle on where we were going about solving predictable revenue. I love your psychological therapeutic approach when it comes, because I never would have thought of that. Like we try to figure out how to communicate with one another, and we try to figure out, but we're trying to, I guess, get to the thing that you've already identified was trust, solving the right problem, and then being able to have the hard conversations that will actually move things forward in a predictable way. So great. We have our takeaway. I don't think we need a takeaway, but there's always a mystery question that I have that tends to flip the script a little bit. It's usually pretty fun. So you've built a career on building predictable revenue, internally, externally, as an advisor, and internally for all the companies you've worked with. So that works a lot if everybody follows the process. But have you ever experienced when a sales rep, let's say, or revenue leader, it's the end of the quarter, they didn't hit their number, and all of a sudden they just go completely rogue? And here's the question. Like, I guarantee this has happened. It's happened to us. We've done it as well, right? You need to hit your goals. So you pull out all the stops, even though it's not right. What's the most unpredictable Hail Mary you've seen a revenue leader do at the end of, say, a quarter or a year that's actually worked?
They create a team. So I've done it, number one, as a individual contributor as a revenue leader. And then I've seen the great ones do it, which is number one, they don't break any ethical rules like you described earlier. They don't do that because they are people of character. These are top performers.
Mhm.
The B, C, and below, they're the ones that will make the questionable moves. But the ones that have character bring everybody together. So they will get with a client because they know that there's a gap to get that particular thing done. And they say, hey, client, what is it that you need for us to get this done by this date, time, whatever, the end of the quarter, whatever it is? The client says, here's what I need. It could be budgetary. It could be feature functionality. It could be services, depending on what somebody is offering or selling. It's maybe it's software plus a service. And they say, hey, look, if I was to able to get this package, I would move forward with you, right? Because I want it, but there's something constraining me. Again, it could be a combination of price, services, whatever. They then take that back internally, big or small company, does not matter. And they have an open and honest conversation and say, hey, everybody, we internally at our company want to hit this goal revenue number, blah, blah, blah. So they understand the mission, they've got clarity, and they bring that back and they say, here's what you told me we want to accomplish. I've got this particular deal that will no doubt help me get to my number, but it will also help the company. And here's why. They have a very clear business reason of why it makes sense. And they ask for every permission and approval possible, and they do it quickly. So they don't wait. They number one, they get that from the client. They got real great clarity there. They know every, you name the term of selling motion, medic, or whatever people want to use, and I've used them all. But then they come back, and again, it's all translation and communication. Then they come back internally and they use the internal language to tie it all together. And they say, here's what this situation is, and here's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a decision. And I have done it. I have run it all the way up to the CEO of Cintas, and gotten what we would call an exception. Hey, here's the pricing, here's the discounting rules, here's the blah, 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 whatever the rule internally is. And they get the right people internally to give them an exception to say, we will approve that deal because it matches our goal. It will take care of the client. It's a great thing for all of us. Let's go. And sometimes it's even not. They'll say, hey, you know what? We're going to take this account because we think that you did a great job of outlining it. So they literally close the translation gap. That's what I've seen done and work. And they might not only do it for one deal, they might do it for 10, but they do it so well and say, we are going to get together in this virtual room and we're going to talk about these 10 deals that will help us get to our number, help our clients get to the outcome. And we think it's great. And here's why. And they may only get 8 approved, but they get to their number. That's it.
You solved the translation gap in that one specific example from top to bottom, and also making it valuable. And there's a buyer reason that they can justify to purchase it. That's a great answer. I would have thought Hail Marys were, a little more of a Hail Mary. That seems like a very calculated play that you could maybe repeat if needed down the road. Like, the methodology is there, it sounds like, from my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I would say, I guess I would be also too, I'm not a Hail Mary person. So that is a Hail Mary to me, because it's, you are going back to the business, if you will. And you're saying, hey, listen, I know this isn't an ideal fit. Here's it's providing clarity. At the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. If we were to just, state it, is clarity is power. And so if that sales leader, revenue person, whoever has clarity, they then can translate that clarity on both sides and get what everybody wants, typically. And sometimes they don't. But those are Hail Marys because they may get turned down, and that's okay. But at least you gave the shot. You could even go back to the client and say, hey, look, I'm your advocate. I'm going to go see if I can get this done. If I can't, I'll let you know. And thanks for being honest with me about what it would take.
To your point, if you have a predictable revenue system, you probably don't need many Hail Marys. But if you need to throw a Hail Mary, like, that's probably the best way to do it. So that's great. So, Paul, if a leadership team, CEO, a revenue leader, all the above you help, like, if they want to work with you, where's the best place to find you? LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, great. I have a landing page, realizerevenue.com. So they can reach out there and they can book directly. And I'll be putting more information out about my go-to-market philosophy and some of the elements we just talked about here over the next few months. And anybody that wants to reach out, LinkedIn's great. Personal outreach, I'll respond. And if they want to hit my landing page, happy to see them there too. And there's a booking link.
I thank you for coming on the show. It's been refreshing to hear this, and it's been really, I've learned quite a bit today. I'm really excited about that. But thank you, Paul. It's been a good show.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you will see Paul very shortly. Thank you again for viewing and listening. This is GTM Get the Money Live with Paul DiVincenzo. Have a great day. Thanks.